All right. Hey guys, Brad here, and now we're going to be checking out unwrapping a little bit more of a complex object. Nothing too crazy, but I thought this would be a good example of working with UVs since we have a few different types of objects. We've got some square shapes and some cylindrical shapes. Um, so I'm going to take you through doing some UV projections and getting some nice UVs set up on this object. So it's just a metal tankard or a wooden tankard if you want. But we're going to go through doing a mixture of planar projections, automatic projections, cylindrical projections, and I'm going to take you through that. Okay. So hopefully after this you'll be a little less intimidated of UVs. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to check out, you know, probably the way I like to go about UVs is I like to say, well, what are the most important things I need to project first? Okay, well, I look at it as shapes. Okay, so the biggest shape, one of the most important shapes is this big cylindrical shell here. Okay, so the shell of the sort of the tankard, the main cup. Okay, so let's go in, and the first thing I'm going to do actually is you always want to make sure that your model is nice and clean, meaning that we've frozen the transformations on it here, and we don't have any construction history on it, which we don't, and we have, so that's good. Okay. And now what I'm going to do is apply a material to this. Okay, so I'm going to go in, I'm going to come down to assign favorite material. I'm just going to put a Lambert on it. Okay, so Lambert 4 is my material over here in the attribute editor. And so I'm just going to type in tankard mat 1. Okay, tankard mat 1. And I put a mat there because I want to know it's a material. Okay, so I always want to put the object name underscore MAT for material 1. All right, always put a 1 there. Okay, okay, all right. So now in the color channel, I'm just going to come over to this options box here. If I want to map an image onto this, I'm going to do it through the color channel. Okay, so I'm going to click this little checker box beside the color channel, and I can put a bunch of different things. I can use a checker texture, but I'm actually going to use a checker texture that I've made myself with a custom one. So I'm going to click File, and that will allow me to create a custom image. Okay, so image name, I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to click a little folder. Okay, to load a texture, I come over to image name, down to image name here, and I'm going to click this little folder. Okay, and then obviously because I have my project set properly, it's going right into the source images folder. Okay, so I'm going to click under textures, and I'll just use in props, I've got tankard. Okay, so I'm going to use this UV checker 01. So this is my custom checker, UV checker, and it's literally a checker pattern, but it also has numbers and letters, and that's important because the numbers and letters will give us a nicer representation of whether or not there's any stretching in the texture, because sometimes if there's just squares it can be a little difficult to see a really nice representation of any stretching. So I'm just going to say open to use that, And then to view my texture in the viewport, I'm going to say 6. I'm going to hit the 6 key. Okay. So there we go. So obviously we've got some... This doesn't look too good, right? You know, I'm starting to see the pattern on some of the stuff here. So the first thing we need to do in this situation is we need to say, well, what do our UVs look like on this object? So I'm going to hold the space bar to get my heads-up display up here, and I'm going to come down to UV, and I'm going to click and hold. I'm going to go right up to the top to UV editor and just let go. Okay. So here's my UV editor. Okay. All right. So let's click our object to see what our UVs look like. And I'm just going to click off my image in the background. Okay, these don't look too good. Okay, they don't look too good. All right, so let's talk about how we can project some of the different shapes on here. In the last videos, we used a cube, and that was just to sort of explain what UVs are and sort of how they work. So we were using automatic projections, which are the same as using planar projections, okay? And planar projections are a single plane, so it could be the Z plane, it could be the Y plane, or meaning the Y direction, Y axis, or it could be the X axis, okay? We used an automatic projection to project our cubes, to get all sides of our cubes, okay? Which basically did an automatic projection of every side of the cube, okay? So pretty simple and straightforward, and that worked because it was a cube with flat faces facing those planes. In this case, we've got a cylinder here, so you know it's a cylindrical object. So we've got a few different planes that are being or that are going to need to be projected. So let's go ahead and do that. So how I can project different parts of this model is I can go to face mode. You know, and because this was modeled in separate pieces, we have different face shells. Okay, we've got a shell. If I double click the cylinder, that's a shell there. Okay, or polygon shells. If I double click the faceplate, that's a shell. And I can click any one of these rivets here, double click them to get those shells, and the handle as well. You can double click that to get that shell. So all of these are shells, and we're going to project them separately so that we get the best results. So let's start with the largest shape here. How do I get this projected? Well, we do have different options for projecting things. Okay, so I'm going to take my UV editor, and I'm going to minimize that. So it's going to go down. It's going to go down here. And let's take a look at some of the different options of projection that we have. So I'm going to go into UV again, and I'm going to tear off the panel by just going up to the dashed line and letting go. So I've got my UV options here. So we used automatic the first time for our cube. But let's go down here and see, okay, so we've got cylindrical, planar, spherical, okay. So these three are going to help us a lot in projecting different types of shapes. So here we go, cylindrical. So if I click that, it's gonna give me a nice cylindrical projection, and you can see it's actually done a pretty nice job of projecting all around that, because we can see that the letters are actually coming up pretty nice. So let's take a look at our UV editor. Okay, so right here, immediately when it's done that projection, we've got that selected here. So I'm going to take this projection, this sort of, let me double click this so I can show you. We've got this orange projection in orange here that's sort of projected the cylindrical part of my tankard. So what I can do is, it's already got it here, so if I click inside the yellow square and drag it, I can pull it out just like that. So I'm going to pull this just up here so that I can see it. Okay. And then I'll just make this window a bit smaller. Okay. So I'll just leave that up there. That's one projection. And what about the front faceplate here? Okay, so if I double click it, I could probably use I could probably use a planar projection for that. So if I click the options box for planar. Okay. What I want is the z-axis. Okay. So if I minimize this, because if I check which way this is facing, so the z-axis is running this way. So yeah, I want to project it this way. So I'm going to click apply. And there we go. We've got a nice projection running this way, which is good. And I'm going to open up my UV editor. Okay. And I don't want to leave it right here. I'm going to pull this away somewhere else. I'm going to pull this off to the side here so that I can sort of see it. And again, I'm clicking in the yellow circle here. I think I said square last time. Make sure it's a circle. Yellow circle. Click in there. Just drag it off to the side so that we can sort of see it clearly. Okay, so there's that. Okay. So we've got an initial projection for that. And okay, let's take a, ooh, that's weird. Okay, so we're going to grab these faces here. I'm going to shift click all of these faces very carefully. Okay. Again, the way I'm doing this is I'm going around and I'm looking at the things that have a lot of really nasty textures. So this is obviously not good. So I need to find another way to project this. And okay, we can see the bottom's pretty gnarly there too. So I'm going to shift click all of these faces on the bottom, just like that. Okay. And I think that'll be fine for that. Now, again, we're going to use another planar projection. So the tops and the bottom of this, that's the y-axis. That's up and down. So if I go back into my planar projection and I click the options box here, I'm going to reproject this on the y-axis. And when I do this, I'm going to open up my, oh, I don't want it that big. I'm going to open up my UV editor because I want to be able to see it when it does get projected. So y-axis, I'll say apply. Okay, and there's that. So I'm going to pull it off. I'm going to pull it up here. Okay. And we can see it's done a pretty good job of projecting that from the top. Okay. And let's double click this shell here. And I think what we'll do is we'll do a planar projection from the z-axis. I think that'll do pretty good. Okay, so z-axis. Okay, that's not bad. So that's not bad. So what I'm doing is what I'm initially doing is doing these initial projections and pulling them off. And after the fact, like after I've done those, then I can go around and make adjustments so that my UVs aren't stretching. And I can adjust those, yeah. And then once I've done the UV adjustments so that there's no stretching or any weird texture stretching, I can move them. I can then organize my shells in the upper right hand quadrant here as per importance of the texture. Okay, and I'll explain, texture, sizing and weighting and stuff a little bit later. But for now, what we're trying to do is just get the initial projections done on each object. So I think now the only thing we have to do are these rivets here. So I'm going to double click each one of these so that I can get all of their polygon shells. And because these are sort of a spherical object, they're sort of like a half sphere. I think what I'm going to use for this is, you may say, oh well, a spherical object would do well, a spherical projection would do well, but actually I'm going to use automatic, and then which will kind of blow these apart and put them all over the place. But then I'm going to go in and sew them back together, because really I want to be treating this kind of like a character's head. So I'm going to go into automatic, and I'll just click automatic because I already know it's set to 6 sides, so I'll click automatic for that projection. Okay, and then I'm going to open my UV editor to see what it's done with that. So here's this is all this here. I'm not sure, so I'm going to go to the move tool. Okay, so these are all of my shells. So I'll just click off anywhere. So here's all these shells here. So this is what I'm left with, okay? And I can tell it's all I'm left with because, I've got nothing in the UV coordinate up here. All right. Okay. So I'm going to close this down, and let's just take a look at what kind of a job it did. So okay, these obviously, we can see that this isn't looking too great, and that's because we used an automatic projection, so it kind of blew them apart. It didn't really keep them together. So what you're getting here essentially is you're getting a whole bunch of seams. We can sort of see there's like part of the 3, part of another letter up here, and that kind of thing. So you've essentially got pieces of these, but they haven't been sewn back together, like I explained sewing UVs with the cube and whatnot. So let's go around. We've done our initial projections. So what we'll do, I'm going to stop the video here. We've done our initial projections. I'm going to stop the video here, and in the next video we're going to start making some adjustments to the UVs so that they're not looking too stretched. Okay? Okay, good job, and I'll see you in the next video. Ta-ta for now.